DNA communes with the apple. You have activated it.
Welcome to Mojo Plays, and today we're looking at times Assassin's Creed games went against their established lore.
Are you wearing one of my father's suits?
Are you wearing a dress?
Don't even start. I feel like a mummy wrapped up in this thing.
Must be quite an occasion to get you so fancy.
It's not like that.
Before we begin, we publish new content all week long, so be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos.
The Isu Vaults. The Templars and the Assassins spend their time fighting over various Isu artifacts, and sometimes trying to find the locations of Isu buildings. Accessing the Grand Temple is the main plot thread of Assassin's Creed 3, after all. But particularly in the Mythology trilogy, we see vast Isu ruins just out in the open, especially the complex Medusa lives in on Lesbos. This begs the question, how the hell did both the factions lose the locations of these places? Bayek and Aya created the Brotherhood, but did they not leave a record anywhere of the enormous Isu ruin in the middle of the desert, for instance? Ezio too apparently wrote nothing down, because they needed to use the Animus to find the vault underneath the Roman Colosseum that he'd already visited. It's just confusing when you think about it. The Cult of Kosmos.
So, you've seen it too then. It's beautiful, isn't it?
The story behind Kosmos is all over the place. First, we have no idea who Kosmos is at all, whether this is just a name pulled out of thin air or whether it correlates to an Isu. It descended from the Cult of Hermes, who was an Isu, but they got tired of him and went their own way. It's also completely distinct from the Order of the Ancients, though both groups, inexplicably, really wanted Xerxes to take control of Greece. As well as that, it's never explained why the cult is so intent on keeping the war going or what its overall aim is. Aspasia says that it wants to control the war to one day unify Greece, encouraging democracy. But the cult has lost its way so thoroughly that Aspasia manipulates Cassandra into killing all of its members.
I couldn't have done this without you, Cassandra. You're doing the right thing.
I always try to do what's right.
Then we're after the same thing.
Eve. We really thought the Adam and Eve storyline would be much more important after seeing that video at the end of Assassin's Creed 2, but that wasn't the case. She didn't really reappear as a figure until Liberation, when Aveline used the disc she'd been collecting to see glimpses of Eve's time leading the human rebellion that overthrew Isu rule. Many think that Ubisoft keeps hinting that Adam and Eve will become important again, with some even thinking that Evie Fry was somehow related to her, but it just hasn't come up. It's a shame because who wouldn't want a game tying up those loose ends?
Adam, I have it.
Eve.
Look out!
Connor and the Colonies.
You're the traitor.
This one is a huge mess, a consequence of Ubisoft going back to add the story of Rogue as a prequel to Assassin's Creed 3. Firstly, it's unusual that Connor never mentions Shay at all, nor does Shay come back when Connor starts systematically murdering every single Templar. Again, this is forgivable since Rogue was written later. But Connor is also mentioned in Rogue itself, with Charles Dorian gloating to Shay as he dies that Connor has already taken the Americas back for the Brotherhood. Except, Shay assassinates Charles in 1776. Connor was active at this time, but he hadn't finished the Templars off. Haytham didn't die until 1781, and Charles Lee not until 1782, years after this happens. Charles really has nothing to brag about. The Father of Understanding.
Master Kenway, did you find it then?
This mysterious figure was regularly invoked by the Templars as part of their mantra, but just who is he? From what we know, the title came from the Isu, and was at one point held by Jupiter, though we don't know the requirements needed for someone to be granted it. It later attained godlike reverence, with the Templars practically worshipping the Father of Understanding. And then they went and revealed that Julius Caesar was the Father of Understanding, though it's still not clear whether the later Templars knew that Caesar had claimed the title, and whether they ended up worshipping his memory centuries later, or if it's all still about the title itself.
May the Father of Understanding guide us. May the Father of Understanding guide us.
Unity's British accents.
King Philip, no punishment is too heinous for the great evil you have inflicted upon the temple.
There was some controversy over Altair's American accent during the first game, which was quickly altered by the time he turned up in Revelations. Since then, AC protagonists have had the accents of the place they're from, with the exception of Unity, in which the French characters all have British accents. This was despite the cast themselves not being British and mainly being French-Canadian. The explanation for this is that the Animus was translating everything, but this is the only game in the franchise where the characters have the wrong accent. So, did Unity use a completely different type of Animus to the other games? The real-world explanation for this was that Ubisoft claimed people were used to hearing British accents in period pieces, which is again bizarre, since all the games are period pieces.
But bringing Monsieur de la Serre's killer to justice would count for something, wouldn't it?
Yes, it would. But do not confuse your personal vendetta with a sound strategy.
The Grey.
To replicate them on a scale the size of a world. We lack the energy to make it so.
We thought we understood the Grey when its concept was developed in Black Flag. It's a digital realm where Juno's consciousness, at least, has been living for. It seems like a pretty difficult process for an Isu to put their consciousness in there, since for a while, Juno was the only one who'd managed it. We later found out that the Aesir had a supercomputer designed to keep them in a virtual afterlife, but the Basim, aka Loki, has been trapped in the Grey. What does this mean for the Reader, though? The Reader is what remains of Desmond Miles after his death in AC3, but it's not clear how his sacrifice actually landed him here. Is it hard to get into the Grey, or can it just happen by accident?
The machine is powered down, but the rate by my calculations. You have 73 seconds before—
I'm not worried. I have the Staff of Eden.
No.
What?
Eagle Vision.
What is it?
We know that Eagle Vision changes because game design trends change, but lore-wise, this only generates inconsistencies. Eagle Vision is intended to represent the supernatural sixth sense that many assassins have, a consequence of their higher proportion of Isu DNA. Technically, the sense is knowledge, which is why it gives you additional information. But in Origins, Eagle Vision was ditched in favor of an actual eagle flying around. And by the time of Valhalla, it wasn't an eagle at all, it was a raven. While Eivor did still have the Odin Sight ability as well. In Shadows, it's looking like the bird mechanic is gone completely, replaced with another iteration of detective mode. The Apple on the Moon. Before the Great Catastrophe, one of the main Isu plans to avert it and save themselves was to put a dozen apples of Eden into the sky to control humanity, making them imagine the threat of the solar flare away and defend the Earth. This alone makes almost no sense, but one of those apples ends up on the moon. The Templars later manipulate JFK into launching the Apollo program, which is all so that they can go to the moon and get this apple. But if you know anything about outer space, you know that the moon is very far away. In fact, when the moon is at its furthest from Earth, all the other planets could fit in a line in the space between. Putting something on the moon on purpose is hard enough, even for the Isu, but apparently, putting something there by mistake is easy. Lucy's betrayal.
What's happening? I can't move.
Your DNA communes with the apple. You have activated it.
This plot point is just one contradiction after another. Though it was eventually explained in a DLC for Revelations that Lucy Stillman had become disillusioned with the Assassins and was working with the Templars, it's still hard to believe. She'd already infiltrated Abstergo as a double agent, and then killed no small number of them while busting Desmond out. So for her to have switched allegiances for good, fans just didn't want to believe it. But if the rumors are true, all of this came out of a behind-the-scenes dispute with Kristen Bell, who played Lucy, and they resolved it by killing her off, though there's no real evidence for this either. If it isn't true, and somebody at Ubisoft decided that killing Lucy was the best thing for the plot, they made a very bad call.
But there's a problem. This is the specific memory we're trying to access.
Let us know in the comments any plot inconsistencies you've noticed.